In the heavy stillness of the courtroom, the steady murmur of the gathered crowd blends into the backdrop. Spectators, journalists, and legal professionals fill the benches, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of polished wood. The room's solemnity is palpable, a space where destinies are often decided. Suddenly, the large oak doors creak open. Every head turns as John Avery, a 93-year-old war veteran, steps into the courtroom. His back is bent from age but not broken by it, his gait slow but determined. By his side, Max, a robust German shepherd with a coat that gleams under the courtroom lights, matches his steps with a disciplined cadence. Max's presence is commanding, his eyes scanning the room with military precision. As John approaches the witness stand, the room's murmur hushes to a whisper. With a practiced hand, he leans slightly to whisper into Max's ear. The response is immediate and startling. A sharp, authoritative bark that reverberates off the high ceilings, silencing the whispers and drawing a startled look from the judge. The judge, an imposing figure behind the bench, slams his gavel with a force that matches the sudden tension in the room. "Order! I will have order," he demands, his eyes locked on John, trying to decipher the unspoken communication between man and dog. As the room falls silent again, the air now charged with a new layer of intrigue, John straightens up, a subtle smile hinting at secrets yet to be revealed. John Avery wasn't always a figure of legal intrigue. His story began in the small town of Brookfield, where he was born just before the Great Depression. A decorated war hero from World War II, John's life was a tapestry of courage, sacrifice, and service. After returning from the war, he dedicated himself to a quiet life, his heroic deeds folded away in his chest of medals and memories. Max came into his life much later, a trained service dog provided by a veterans' aid organization to help him cope with the creeping shadows of age and the lingering specters of war. The bond between them was instantaneous, rooted in mutual respect and the unspoken understanding between a soldier and his companion. The case that brought John to this courtroom was as complex as it was contentious. A large corporation, Tecton Systems, was accused of defrauding veterans through investments tied to military developments. The case had gained national attention, casting a spotlight not only on the alleged corporate malfeasance but also on the systemic issues facing veterans seeking justice. John's involvement began when his own investments, savings meant for his grandchildren's education, were wiped out by what he believed were deceptive practices by Tecton. After months of silent suffering and the loss of his lifelong savings, his plight caught the attention of Sarah Jennings, a young and determined attorney specializing in elder law and veterans' rights. Sarah saw in John not just a victim, but a potential key witness who could personify the broader struggles of many veterans. Their preparation for the trial was an intense collaboration. Sarah, with her sharp intellect and legal acumen, and John, with his detailed recollections and personal insights into the veterans' community, worked tirelessly. John's testimony was to be the emotional and moral cornerstone of the case, highlighting not just the personal impact of the fraud, but the honor and trust betrayed by Tecton. The trial's significance was twofold. Firstly, it was about securing justice for countless veterans who had been wronged. Secondly, it served as a public platform to highlight the challenges veterans faced, bringing to light the often overlooked aspects of their post-service lives. As the day of the testimony approached, John and Max became inseparable. Max was more than a service dog. He was John's anchor, maintaining his calm in the overwhelming storm of legal strategies and media attention. Sarah had argued fervently for Max's presence in the courtroom, an unusual but necessary comfort for John as he faced the daunting task of confronting those he believed had betrayed him. This backstory sets the stage for the high-stakes emotional and legal drama that unfolds in the courtroom. The audience is now fully aware of the depth of John's character and his motivations, creating a strong rooting interest in his quest for justice and highlighting the profound bond between him and Max. As the script progresses, these elements will converge, driving the narrative toward its dramatic climax. The morning of the testimony, the air in Sarah Jennings' office was thick with anticipation. Papers littered the large oak desk, each document a piece of the complex puzzle they were about to lay before the court. Sitting across from Sarah, John Avery adjusted the medals pinned neatly to his blazer, each a testament to his decades of service. Max lay quietly at his feet, a comforting presence amidst the storm of legal preparations. "Remember, John," Sarah began, her voice steady, "your testimony is not just about reciting facts. It's about telling your story, making the jury understand the depth of the betrayal." John nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting a mix of determination and nerves. "I've faced enemy fire," he said, half-jokingly, "but this feels like a different battleground." Sarah smiled, appreciating his attempt to lighten the mood. "Just focus on being honest. You've trusted me with your story. Now trust the jury to see the truth of it." They rehearsed his entrance, the delivery of his statement, and how he should address the jury. Sarah emphasized clarity and sincerity, knowing these elements would resonate more than any legal jargon. She watched as John interacted with Max, giving a gentle pat on the head or a soft word. It was this genuine, unguarded demeanor she wanted the jury to see. As they walked through his testimony, John occasionally faltered, the weight of his memories tangling his words. Sarah patiently guided him back, ensuring he felt confident and prepared. Max, ever attuned to John's emotions, would nudge his hand whenever he sensed rising anxiety, grounding John back to the moment. The courtroom was a theater of legal spectacle as John, guided by Sarah, made his entrance. The prosecution sat to the left, a team of sharp, focused individuals led by Sarah. Across from them, the defense was equally formidable, with lead attorney Richard Hammond known for his ruthless efficacy in the courtroom. Judge Martin, an experienced jurist with a reputation for fairness, presided over the trial. He surveyed the courtroom with a discernible sense of duty, understanding the gravity of the case before him. As John took the stand, Judge Martin nodded slightly, a gesture of respect towards the veteran. The initial exchanges were tense. Richard Hammond, representing TechDin Systems, opened with a series of objections, challenging everything from the admissibility of evidence to the relevance of John's testimony. Sarah parried each objection with precision, her voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, the defense's attempts to limit Mr. Avery's testimony only serve to underscore its importance. This isn't just about numbers and contracts, it's about the impact on real lives, lives like Mr. Avery's," Sarah argued. Judge Martin, after a moment of consideration, overruled Hammond's objections. "Proceed, Ms. Jennings. Let's hear what Mr. Avery has to say." As John began his testimony, the courtroom's atmosphere was electric. Jurors leaned forward, captivated by the emotion in his voice as he recounted his experiences. He spoke of his military service, the comrades he'd lost, and the trust he had placed in TechDin, only to be betrayed. Hammond watched John intently, preparing for his cross-examination. He noted every hesitation, every inflection in John's voice, planning to use these moments to sow doubt about the reliability of his testimony. The prosecution's strategy was clear as Sarah directed John through his narrative, linking personal losses to the broader scheme perpetrated by TechDin. She presented documents and emails, asking John to confirm their authenticity and explain their significance in simple terms. As John's testimony continued, the tension within the courtroom built. The jury was visibly moved by his honesty and vulnerability. Even the usually stoic Judge Martin seemed affected, his gaze often lingering on John, as if deeply considering the weight of his words. The defense, meanwhile, whispered among themselves, recalculating their approach in light of John's compelling testimony. Hammond knew he had to tread carefully. Attacking a respected veteran too aggressively could backfire with the jury. As the session neared its end, Sarah sensed the momentum was in their favor. She had one last question for John, one she knew would strike at the heart of the case. Mr. Avery, in your opinion, did Tech-Din Systems betray the trust of the veterans it purported to serve? John paused, looking over at Max, who sat attentively by his side. He took a deep breath, his next words poised to echo through the courtroom, carrying with them the weight of truth and the hopes of many. The preparation, the dynamics, the emotional investment all converged in this moment, setting the stage for the dramatic developments that would follow as the trial progressed into its critical phases. The courtroom settled into a tense silence as John Avery adjusted the microphone in front of him. Clearing his throat, he glanced briefly at Max, who lay beside the witness stand, his eyes fixed on John with unwavering attention. Sarah Jennings stood up, her presence commanding yet reassuring as she approached John. "Mr. Avery, could you please tell the court about your involvement with Tech-Din Systems?" John nodded, his voice steady despite the underlying nerves. "I invested with Tech-Din because they promised to support veterans with opportunities that were supposed to help us transition back into civilian life. They said they were committed to honoring our service." "And how did that turn out?" Sarah asked, guiding him gently through his narrative. "Initially, everything seemed fine, but then delays started happening. Promised returns never materialized and communications started to get vague. It wasn't just me. I learned many others were affected too," John explained, his frustration palpable. Sarah handed him a stack of documents. "Are these the communications you received from Tech-Din?" "Yes, they are," John confirmed, his fingers trembling slightly as he flipped through the papers. As Sarah directed him to specific emails that outlined the false promises, John's testimony grew more detailed. His voice cracked as he recounted the hope he had felt and the subsequent betrayal. The courtroom listened, rapt, as John described his personal losses, how he had planned to use the returns on his investments for his granddaughter's education, only to be left with nothing. The jurors' faces reflected a mix of sympathy and anger. Richard Hammond rose for the cross-examination, his demeanor cool and calculated. "Mr. Avery, isn't it true that investments are inherently risky? How can you be sure that Tech-Din intentionally misled you?" John looked directly at Hammond, his gaze steady. "Because they specifically targeted veterans, promising us stability and exploiting our trust. It wasn't just a bad investment. It was a scheme designed to take advantage of us." Hammond pressed on, questioning John's memory and attempting to poke holes in his story by suggesting confusion or misinterpretation. But John remained firm, his recollections clear and his resolve unshaken. As the cross-examination continued, Max's presence seemed to anchor John, reminding him of the strength he had within. Whenever Hammond's questions grew too invasive, a subtle look towards Max brought John back to his center. Sarah watched the interaction closely, ready to object if Hammond crossed the line. The judge, too, kept a close eye on the proceedings, ensuring fairness prevailed. The moment that defined John's testimony came unexpectedly. Hammond was in the midst of questioning the legitimacy of an email when John, feeling overwhelmed, subtly scratched his ear. A gesture that seemed innocuous to most, but was a trained signal between him and Max. Reacting instantly, Max stood up, his body tense. His sudden movement drew the attention of everyone in the room. The dog's behavior seemed out of character, his growling low but clear, directed not at John but seemingly towards Hammond. The courtroom erupted into whispers as people speculated about the dog's reaction. Sarah seized the moment, asking for a brief recess to confer with her client. Judge Martin, sensing the unusual nature of the situation, granted the break. During the recess, Sarah met with John in a quiet corner of the courthouse. "John, what happened there? That was not like Max." John looked troubled, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and determination. "I didn't plan to use Max like this, but Hammond's pushing reminded me of something crucial. That email, it was not just a false promise, it was part of a pattern. Max knows it too. He was there when I first read those lies." Sarah's eyes widened as she grasped the implication. "You mean to say, Max reacted because he recognized the deceit, the stress it caused you. Yes, John confirmed. We trained with signals not just for comfort but for truth. When I scratch my ear, it's our sign for detecting lies based on stress and scent. I didn't realize it then, but it makes sense now. Max was alerting us to the deception, not just reacting to my stress. Realizing the potential impact of this revelation, Sarah quickly formulated a new line of questioning. When they returned to the courtroom, she addressed the judge. Your Honor, I believe we have uncovered significant new evidence. With your permission, I would like to